Core values, individual freedom and personal responsibility. Free market capitalism as an engine of human progress. Patriotism, enthusiastic love of country. Social values of religion, family, and respect for tradition. Local initiative and local charity. Core concerns, grouping people into identity categories that compromise their individuality. Government expansion, such as overregulation and excessive taxation, that limits the freedom of individuals and businesses to make their own choices. Skepticism, yeah, I get that right. Skepticism about the ability of government to manage complex programs. Suspicion of utopian promises and caution about social engineering as coming with many unintended consequences. Being immediately labeled with an ism or phobia when expressing views on public policy and cultural issues.
Beautiful. And it says in my notes that they should be read slowly with conviction. I think you did that. Thank you so much. Okay, so who would like to read? Oh, I need to do a little caveat here. The values and concerns vary among libertarians, social conservatives, populists, and free enterprise conservatives. So again, those aren't the be-all, end-all things, but we took a stab at it. Okay, who would like to read the liberal values and concerns? Oh, good, 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 good.
Core values, inclusiveness, especially for those on the margins, diversity, the value of human differences, a level playing field for people who have been denied opportunities, an active government to help those in need and ensure fairness, safe social environments, which includes attention to language, core concerns, abuses of free market capitalism that lead to the exploitation and inequality, ignoring historical forces of injustice that are still present, patriotism that is not balanced with criticism, groups who are left out of social progress, being immediately labeled with terms such as woke and big government liberal when presenting views on public policy and cultural issues.
Thank you very much. Excellent job. Okay, and once again, these values and concerns vary between progressives and moderate liberals. So they're not carved in stone, shall we say. So, okay, so now we want to do a little exercise. And as we move into this exercise, we call it a reflection exercise. I invite you to consider how better understanding the values and concerns of people who differ from you can help you listen better to them. Again, try to resist arguing in your mind or focusing on contradictions between the other side's values and actions. Your own side is not fully consistent either, remember. So, and a final caveat, don't get caught up in whether the values and concerns of your own side are complete or stated the way you prefer. So we're going to begin with a moment of personal reflection while you look over the values and concerns of the political side that's most different from your own. Feel free to circle or note what stands out to you. Again, okay, I'm going to give you a minute to do that.
Would you repeat what you just said?
Yes, the question is, it's good, it's good. How might understanding these values and concerns from the other side help you listen better? Okay, now, I just realized I actually should have had you sit next to someone you don't necessarily know very well, because I want, at some point, we're gonna do paired shares, sharing with another person, and it might be better to turn around and find someone that you don't necessarily know very well, or to do this exercise. Or is this such a close group that you all know each other really well? Well, just do it either way. We'll just do it. It's fine. So I want you to discuss for a few minutes the answer to that question with the other person. So the question again is, how might understanding the values and concerns from the other side help you listen better? So I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to share with each other, find someone else to share with, the answer to, talk about that question. People sharing something that they got out of that. What do you see out of that? What do you see about how might understanding these values and concerns from the other side help you listen better? Who can share something about that with me, with us, with the whole group?
Say that again, please.
How might understanding the values and concerns of the other side help you listen better? Yes.
Well, I think one of the things is that I don't always understand the other side. So that's where, we come in here to talk to the other side and understand. Just, looking at this list doesn't really help me to understand.
Okay.
It might help me listen to what, to an explanation behind something on this list, but I don't feel that the list itself helps me to listen better.
Okay.
I have questions about some of these things, and, if you can tell me, expand on.
Okay. So you want specifics.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that individual's ideas, concerns, and values.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Great. That's wonderful. Thank you. Okay.
We had one, it was sort of interesting because the first one jumped out at me about individual freedom. And I said, well, I think that maybe doesn't apply to women. And this woman said, oh, I agree with you on that. So, we expected to disagree and we really didn't.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. That is great.
Can you repeat that?
Okay, I apologize. So she said, I'm going to let her repeat it. I don't want to try to repeat it. Okay.
Where's her paraphrasing?
Yeah, no kidding.
The thing that jumped out at the two of us was the first bullet point about individual freedoms. And I said, well, I think that pertains to many people, but often not to women, expecting that my partner would disagree with me. And she said, oh, well, really, I agree with you. So that was just surprising that we expected to disagree and we really didn't.
Isn't that interesting? So if you actually talk to someone on the other side, you might discover that there might not be the kind of disagreement that you thought, or it might be for a different reason. And so getting specifics would make a difference. Very good. Very good.
Excuse me, ma'am?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
Another value to that is, while you're listening, you're taking yourself out of your own echo chamber, and the longer you, while you're listening to other folks, you're shortening your trip down your own echo chamber, and the longer you stay in your echo chamber, the bigger the rat hole you've made. So the way to get out of there is to listen to someone else.
Yes. That is wonderful. I love that. And so you might ask yourself, well, what is the access to that? What is the access to getting out of my own echo chamber? What is the access to listening to the other side?
Asking questions.
Asking questions. That is very good.
Rephrasing heard.
Rephrasing what you heard. And I was going to offer one thing, and that is curiosity. Being curious. If you could take on a being of being curious, practicing that, practicing being curious. Oh, that's such a fun thing to practice in life. Yes. But in political conversations, was there someone over here who wanted to say something?
Not necessarily assuming that you're right and that you know everything about everything, and allowing that there are other people with other values and opinions that may be right as well.
Yes, and you know what I hear in that is a willingness to be humble. The reason I'm laughing so hard is because this is not one of my traits. In fact, my late husband used to say, my tombstone when we would read, "She knew best." So that is something that I'm practicing.
So I just observed something that I am not happy to admit, but when I read through the values and the concerns of the other side, I immediately went into my defense and my arguments. It was so automatic. And so this is helping me to understand, just to be aware of how automatic it is for me to do that. I wasn't even talking to a person and I already had the argument.
My gosh, that is brilliant. That is so brilliant. I love this group. This is brilliant. This is brilliant. And if I had more time, I would tell you the story about how I lost it at the National BraverAngles Convention in talking to someone on the other side. I don't have time to tell you the story. I can tell you afterwards if you want. But anyway, it was very interesting to me that was a great learning experience for me. So, okay, we're going to take one more, and then we got to keep moving because we've got more skills to learn. Okay.
My point was similar to the very first one made about wanting more specifics, except as I realized that, and I was using just the very first one in core values as a saying people who believe that have a reason for believing that. It's from who they are, from the fullness of their humanness. Something pushes them that direction, just like something pushes me the other direction. I don't know what that is. And then after I said that, I said, I'm not sure I know what those on my side got there either. And so it really is not one-sided one way or the other. It's we don't understand ourselves, we don't understand the other side. We need to talk to everybody.
Oh, this is beautiful. This is so beautiful. That is so great. Because you know what I hear in that comment is something that I believe also, and that is that listening to the other side and talking to the other side helps me understand my thinking on my side better and to identify it. And I've been asking myself, I went through a course where the whole year, the question for the whole year when we meet periodically was, how do you know that? How do you know that? Well, how do you know that? Well, how do you know that? It's a haunting question, I'll tell you. And so I think this is why I say this is practicing democracy, because we all get a chance to actually explore and educate ourselves on even our own beliefs. I like that. I like that. That's so great. That's so great. Okay, well, we've got to move on, because the next skill to think about is, we call it, it's acknowledge. And this is to acknowledge the other person's view before you share your own perspective. So most political conversations go this way. You say up, I say down. You say hot, I say cold. You say my candidate is terrible, I say yours is worse. The principle behind the acknowledge skill is to connect first before you disagree. So acknowledging means letting the other person know that you actually heard their viewpoint and the strength of the feelings, values, and concerns about it. So when you are acknowledging someone, you are feeding back what you heard without just parroting their own views. This, I think, is one of the most magical things, magical skills to do in life, is when you acknowledge someone and so that they feel like, I was heard. That is it's a very powerful skill. It's a wonderful skill to practice. And it's particularly valuable in political conversations. So, here's an example. I hear you on climate change. You don't want the federal government regulating the economy over a threat that might not materialize. Or you believe we're running out of time on climate change and have to take strong measures to address it. Or, if I understand you right, you're saying we should eliminate access to certain kinds of guns to prevent mass shootings. I get you have strong feelings about DEI programs causing harms. So, when you're acknowledging someone, you're not just saying telling them, oh, I think what I'm hearing you say is this, but you're also acknowledging perhaps the intensity of the feeling. I hear you feel really strongly about this local issue in Ely. I hear you feel really strongly about it. So acknowledging is magic. I really believe it is. But again, it takes being present to it. It takes practicing it. Being present to, oh yeah, this is when I'm supposed to acknowledge them. Okay, you've got to get your mind trained to do that. And again, this is why in your local alliances, these meetings that you have every month, you can actually practice these skills with each other. So anyway, so does anyone have, well, just one or two of you, what are the advantages of acknowledging first before sharing your own perspective? Anyone else? Yeah, I think you are wonderful. This is brilliant. This is brilliant. I'm not just saying that. I'm really impressed with the thinking you're doing here. Yeah.
There seems to be another part of that when you are giving the acknowledgement back, that if whatever level that person rose to emotionally, that you don't match that. If anything, you come at them with a lower volume that way, because that helps you de-escalate something. If you return with the same kind of emotional force, probably the quickest thing that's going to happen is it's just going to accelerate even more.
Yeah.
So that's another part of your reply or response to it.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I think that's very, very helpful, very useful. Absolutely. If you can acknowledge and say back to them without that kind of intensity, but just it's heartfelt coming from you. Here's what I hear you saying. Here's what I understand you're saying.
So from my perspective, I would not feel right acknowledging somebody that was not giving a factual statement. If it was a fallacy, I would not want to acknowledge that if it's not true.
That is brilliant. I'm so glad you said that, because that is something that we can encounter, particularly these days. And so I think if I were in that situation, what I would be doing would be asking more questions. Like, okay, I understand this is what you said. Now, how did you come to that? What brought you to that? how do you know that? And I think by asking that kind of question, you might be able, that person could be able to give you something that then you could, so acknowledging does not mean you agree. It does not mean you're agreeing with what they're saying. It just means that you hear them. You hear them. Yeah. So does that help? Does that make any, so what do you see about that? You don't want to even, so there's someone saying something like, the moon is made of green cheese.
I believe I would like to hear an explanation from them on why they have that opinion and where they got their data or facts or material from. And if it's not a fact, where they got the information from.
Okay, but what you could do in that situation is say, oh, I hear, so you think that our moon is composed of or is made of green cheese. That's what I'm hearing you saying. Am I hearing you right? I just want to be sure I'm hearing you right. And then you might lead to your questions. So that's really good. That's really good. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate that. Okay. All right. So I've gone through that part. Flip the page. All right. So, so yes, you can ask a brief clarifying question, but don't start asking. Bill's advice here, Bill Doherty wrote these, and Bill's advice here is don't start asking challenging questions that signal you are arguing, not listening. So that's the key to being able to take that second step of acknowledging. It's not about arguing. You know, one of the things that I guess I have reluctantly come to learn from my involvement in BraverAngles is that it is not my job to change your opinion. I don't necessarily like that. But I have found that I have just taken that on. It's like, you know what? It's not really my job to get people to change their opinions. That for me. Now, you guys just because I'm doing that doesn't mean that you should do that. I'm just saying that that's what I have gotten out of BraverAngles because I now can talk to friends who are on the other side, and I love them. I love them. We're having great conversations. And we're not changing each other's mind. So, I don't know. That's that. Yeah.
If you have time.
Yeah. Probably not, but go ahead.
I'll make it really quick. To de-escalate in the acknowledgement, you can always ask or say, tell me more, and get the person to talk more. And then you're not fighting with them.
Yes, there is a lot of wisdom in this group. And it's not just because we've got silver hair. I can tell you that. It's not just because we've got silver hair. Okay. All right, now, I think we're going to have to run through this next part really quickly because this is to practice the acknowledge skill. And that is, I'm going to read a prompt expressing two different points of view on policing and public safety and decide which one of the two prompts is farther from your own position and then write down word for word an acknowledgement statement that shows you have heard that person in the prompt. Okay, the two prompts are in your handout and you can read them along with me. So, the two prompts are the conservative prompt on policing. I think too many liberals are ignoring the problem of rising crime in this community. It's getting scary to live here. I hear too much defund the police and other anti-police rhetoric. I know there are some bad apples in law enforcement, but by and large, our officers are doing a good job, and it's demoralizing for them when civic leaders and regular citizens don't support them. I want our city to do the right thing by expanding the law enforcement presence. I know officers can't solve every problem. They are our first line of defense and deserve our full support. The liberal prompt. You conservatives seem to think that throwing more money into law enforcement is going to solve the crime problem. Crime comes from poverty and discrimination and has to be solved by addressing those problems. Communities of color in particular don't trust the police, and for good reason. Instead of increasing the police budget, I support funding for social workers who can respond to mental health 911 calls rather than armed officers showing up. And we need to support community agencies that get to the root causes of crime. Let's stop overemphasizing law enforcement and take a broader view of how to improve safety, public safety. Okay, again, choose which prompt is farther from your own point of view and write down word for word an acknowledged statement that shows you've listened. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do that. Would someone like to read their statement, please?
Oh, I'll read mine.
Oh, goody.
What I hear you say is that liberals do not believe crime is a serious issue that needs to be addressed now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I hear you. What causes you to feel that there is rising crime? Have you been a victim? If so, tell me about it, as I have not had any issues over this and I would like to learn more.
Okay, that would invite more conversation. Excellent, thank you. Okay. Okay.
I understand your concerns and I agree that something needs to be done.
Great. Great, because in case you haven't noticed, these issues that we're dealing with, the public issues, are very complicated. If they were easy to solve, we would have solved them a long time ago. You know, as I said, as somebody said, I was a reporter for 26 years. How many rounds? We're in like the 5th round of grade inflation in colleges. I heard the story this morning. It's like, I wrote about that 40 years ago. You know, so these issues are complex. There's not easy solutions. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the third skill, which is an easier one and one of the most fun ones, because I think Bill came up with the best analogy for this. This is the pivot. So a pivot signals that you are about to offer your own viewpoint, that you want to offer your own viewpoint. So how do you do that? So the examples are, so can I offer you my thoughts on this? Or you could say, you know, this is something I've thought a lot about. And I would like to share what I think about this. Again, one of the most powerful things you can do at this stage is to ask the other person's permission to share your point of view. I know that kind of makes some of us bristle because we think, I should be able to state my point of view. And of course you should. But if you want the other person to hear it, they have to have their ears open and their minds not making you wrong. And so one way to open that door to their minds is to say, you know, may I share my point of view with you? It'd be interesting to do an experiment, wouldn't it? About how many times you actually said that to someone and someone said no. Probably, because if someone said no, then that would be a signal, well, okay, thank you. I don't think we need to have this conversation anymore, you know, or at least right now. right? Yeah, it's a very powerful thing to do, and it's not something that I was ever taught before. I was taught to be polite and to wait until the other person finished, and then I would share my point of view. But I wasn't taught to ask, I'd like to share my point of view, is that okay? It's a really, really wonderful skill. I really think you should do it, and you should think of a pivot as...
30.
Okay. So the thing to do is think of a pivot as like signaling that you're going to make a turn. Like, you know, you signal before you make the turn. So that's what the pivot does. You're pivoting. You're letting the person know, I want to turn the conversation now. So it's like you're going to make a turn in your car. The actual turn comes later. So then, obviously, if the other person seems open to listening to what you have to say, then continue. If the other person just repeats their point, ignoring your pivot, or showing wariness about you taking your turn, then just consider backing up. This might not be the right time to share your views. You could listen and acknowledge some more to see if they then become ready to listen to you, or simply exit the conversation. Just there's that. So you could write down a statement, a pivot statement, to signal that you would like to take your turn at sharing your perspective. Keep in mind that a pivot statement does not get into the content of your view. That's the thing about a pivot statement. You're not beginning to tell them what you think, you're just beginning to tell them, I would like to share what my point of view is and how I came to have that point of view. You know, one of the things that Bill Doherty says that I like so much is he says, there is a story behind every person's opinion. Someone said something along that lines over here. There is a story there. Why are they saying the moon is made of green cheese? Really, why is that? That's where being genuinely curious comes in again. So, this calls for writing a pivot statement, but you could write down a pivot statement, but I think we're gonna skip over that. But I think it's a pretty simple idea, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's a profound idea at the same time. It's simple and it's profound. So I will ask you, so what do you think is the advantage of using a pivot statement before you offer your perspective? What do you think is the advantage of that? I will take a couple of people responding to that question.
It disarms the other person.
Yes! That's so good! It disarms the other person. It's because none of us have been taught to do this, right? Well, I wouldn't say none of us, but I wasn't. A lot of us haven't been taught to ask permission to share a point of view. Yes, it's very disarming. Excellent.
It shows respect for the other person.
It shows respect for the other person.
It kind of takes their temperature, so if they seem like they're not ready to hear something else, you're not wasting that point of view. You can save it for a more receptive moment.
Beautiful. I tell you, you guys are stars. You guys are stars. This is so great. I'm just so, moved by how brilliant you are about all this. And the fact that you're here and that we're talking about this and that you can go and you can practice these skills, it just moves me to tears. Okay, so then the last thing is perspective. So these skills, if you want to, so-called acronym. It's LAPP, listen, acknowledge, pivot, and the last one is perspective. And so, here again, the elements of sharing your perspective are pretty simple. The first one is to use I statements. This is how I see it. This is why I see it this way. As opposed to, this is what is so. This is, Social Security should be increased. I would say that, wouldn't I? So what you're saying is, I could say, I would like to see Social Security benefits increased, but I know it would be expensive for the government. So use I statements rather than truth statements, like Social Security benefits should be increased. Not that people are going to be that dramatic about it. I just always add a little drama to things. So, and then in sharing your perspective, the other thing that you can do is you can name your sources. I'm basing my view on data about the risk of suicide from guns in the home, which is actually a bigger risk to life than stranger attacks. In fact, there was just a report that came out that I heard on probably NPR about it was on gun safety or about suicides. I don't remember exactly what the story was.
Fourth leading cause of death in the United States at the moment.
It's the fourth leading cause of death in the United States.
CDC mortality and whatever they call it.
Yeah, particularly among young people. Maybe I read it in the newspaper. I can't remember. Anyway, take in a lot of information. All right, so name your sources. And it doesn't have to be necessarily, because I read a lot of different sources, and so what I could say is my reading has convinced me that personal gun ownership is deeply rooted in the U.S. Constitution. You could put it that way, but I do think the more specific you can get, the better. So I statements, citing your sources, and then the other thing that you can do in sharing your point of view is share a personal experience, a personal story behind your viewpoint. I came at this as a child of immigrants. I used to live in a southern border town, and here's what I saw when I was in this southern border town. You could also, in talking to the other person, try to mention something that you agree with. I'm completely with you on making sure our elections are trustworthy and open to everyone who is eligible to vote, but I think the approach I take and the approach that I support will help bring that about. So try to mention something you agree with. Again, in sharing your perspective, avoid stereotypes, negative levels. That's a racist policy, that's a socialist policy, and avoid sweeping everyone into your disagreement. Instead of saying, avoid you Democrats or you Republican language, focus on the people in this conversation rather than on lumping anyone into a larger group. It is so easy for us, as human beings, I think, we're of course overwhelmed with all this information we have. And we're just trying to simplify things and figure out what the heck we mean. So it's very easy for us to just say, oh, those Democrats, they all think like this. Or, oh, those Republicans, they all think like this. But here again, this group is a great opportunity for you to find the nuances and the differences of opinions within any side, actually. All right, so now I want you to just turn to someone next to you and share what you say about perspective and how to share your perspective on something. So I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. Okay, we've got a few minutes to wrap up here. Okay. So, just a couple of things. I would love to have you, I think that Johnny invited you to turn in the sheet, the other sheet that she handed out with your thoughts on where this alliance should go next. And I would love it if you could give us oh, what's going on here? Peg, what are you telling me? If you could, just write a line or two about your we want to be evaluated. I want to be evaluated. What worked, what didn't work. I've gotten some feedback already. I appreciate that. And so, because we would like to know how this is working. And now I would like to hear from a few people on what did you get out of this? What opened up for you tonight from this discussion?
If you abandon your right to be your right to be right and your ego.
It's easy if you abandon your right to be right and your ego to talk to the other side, is what you're saying. Yeah. And I agree with that. But I do think for many people, and I'm really saying myself here, is it takes a lot of practice to do that, to give up my right to be right. It really takes a lot. And when I think about it, it's like I don't actually have to give it up. I just have to park it off to the side and hold it there while I'm having this conversation with this person with the other point of view, or other points of view. So, yes, yeah.
You don't abandon it. If you abandon that right and abandon your ego, it's very easy to do what you're talking about doing this evening, and that's a very good thing, I believe. But then at the end of the day, you've made more progress with your side of the story because you've adopted communication.
Yes. Excellent. That's right. You actually have communicated your point of view, heard their point of view, and that's what we need to do more of in what I am calling this new era of democracy, where I would assert that we have to be more involved in different ways than we may have been in the past. So, thank you. Anyone else have any comments here? Any things that you're taking away from tonight that you see that opened up for you tonight that you maybe hadn't thought about before?
It partially acknowledges what somebody has said, but then it also acknowledges that I have an opinion. But like somebody else said, sometimes you can gauge it isn't the right time to share that opinion. But it acknowledges for both people that we both have opinions and we need to listen to each other.
Yeah, the pivot. There's gold in there, people. There is definitely gold in that pivot. And you will notice in our Braver Angels way, I love the fact that that Nick read that out. I think that's beautiful. It should be done at every meeting, I think. I love it because it says, we state our views fully and freely without fear. And I think that we need to be willing and be able to state our views fully and freely without fear. And so someone else, let's see, there's a couple things. How much did I do? Okay. So one of the things that we have to be very, we have to think about in Braver Angels is being sure that we attract and we involve and we bring people in who have different points of view. It does seem to be far easier to attract people who lean blue than people who lean red. And so I would invite all of you to, you certainly all must know people who lean red. And I would really invite you to invite them to come to the next meeting and have that be a really powerful meeting for them, where they can feel heard. It's very important. We're working very hard on that at the state level because our membership in the state overall is I don't remember the percentages off the top of my head, but it is weighted on the lean blue side, and we do not like that. We are working hard to go into areas that are conservative areas where they've voted red, and offering them the possibility of becoming a part of BraverAngles, and we want to welcome people. And the people who shy away from coming into this work and coming into an alliance, they're skeptical, they're afraid, they don't think they'll be heard, they think that that people will say things back to them, you know. And so we have to, I think, try all that much harder to bring in people who are skeptical. And there's people like that on the blue side too, believe me, but there's more of them on the red side. That's just the way it is. So I just want to tell you that we are very excited because we are going to be launching a statewide campaign in this contentious political year. This is going to come out in March, and we're calling it Reduce the Rancor, Minnesota. And we're getting some powerful people on both sides of the political aisle involved and are willing to stand with us and work on this. And we are, you'll be hearing more about this. I presume that all of you subscribe and get the state newsletter that we put out every couple of weeks. And we will be telling you more. So it's very exciting what's going to happen there. And we're going to be launching a new website. Oh, and I had a brilliant idea the other day. That is, we need pictures for our website. And I bet some of you could share some pictures of this beautiful area. What I want are pictures of Minnesota, pictures that reflect Minnesota, different parts of Minnesota. So I'm going to put a little item on that in our next newsletter and give you a place where you can send in your pictures so we can put that up, because we're going to unveil our new BraverAngles Minnesota website. So, and we thought, what better than to ask for our members, because we all have cool pictures on our phone, don't we? Like, oh yeah. So anyway, think about that. And then I don't know if you all know about Talking Sense, that BraverAngles is in partnership with Minnesota Public Radio. Catherine Richard. Yeah.
Okay, sure. You'll have to forgive me, I'm really tired. I think I've interviewed 6 to 7, maybe 8 people today. Some of you are in the room. So it's been a really good day, but I'm just a little tired. So my name's Catherine Richard. I work for NPR. I've worked for them for about 15 years. First half of my career was covering politics, both in Washington, D.C. and then here in Minnesota. You might remember a feature that I used to do. This was like 2010 to 2015 called Polygraph, where I take political claims, then Peg's raising her hand back there. I'd take something Mark Dayton said or something Tim Pawlenty said, and I'd pick it apart and I'd be like, well, that's false. And I'd go on the air and I'd tell everyone that was false. And I think that experience was really interesting to me because as a reporter, as a political reporter, so often we're on deadline, we're covering, really contentious issues in the moment. We got to hit those deadlines. We don't always fact check the things that our politicians are saying, red and blue. So this was a different model. And then, you know, fast forward a few years later, I'm in Rochester, that's where I am now. I live there with my 3 kids and my husband, you know, and I cover that part of the state for NPR, and I find myself covering COVID-19. And this was really a game changer for me sort of personally and professionally, because I was talking to people who had really different views about things, like the vaccine, like whether we should be wearing masks, whether COVID was that serious or not. I'll be up here and I'll be the first to say that in my family, my husband being a physician, we were really excited to get that vaccine. That was something that we looked forward to. But I was out there every day talking to people who did not want it. And it was not because they didn't care about their neighbors. It wasn't because that they didn't have good information. It was because they had a story in their lives about how they had arrived at that particular belief. For some people, it's because they don't trust the medical system. For some people, it was religious. For some people, it's because they just don't want someone else telling them what they can do with their body. And those were all stories. And I think that really helped me become a better reporter. The other thing that really informed where I am right now today is interviewing people who would be like, well, you know, I lost a neighbor because of COVID, or, you know, my great aunt died and it's really sad and we're all really mourning that person. But you know what I'm really sad about is that I can't talk to my best friend from childhood about anything anymore because we have become so divided. Because of, where's this voice coming from?
Johnny's
Oh. So anyway, I think both years of covering politics and then covering the pandemic got me to a point where I decided to pitch Talking Sense to the powers that be at NPR, and this was like a year ago. And I put together this plan where we would do 3 things. The first thing is that we would create an online tool that would help people have these challenging conversations and help them think about it in advance. Because I don't know about you, but I've found myself in situations plenty of times where I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what to say. And I feel like I'm like a really informed person who talks to people all the time, and yet I'm caught flat-footed in that moment. I don't know what to say to this person. And it's not just about politics, it's, you know, in my personal life, about other things with my spouse and my friends. And then the second thing is we're going to be doing live events around the state, probably really similar to this one, where we're going to be partnering with BraverAngles on facilitating them. So our first one is going to be in Woodbury at the end of February, where we're hoping to have either the 2 state party leaders join and not talk to the audience, but actually participate like everyone else. And then the third thing is just our reporting thread throughout 2024. We cover politics. We cover money in politics. We cover the state capitol. But what we haven't done is actually covered polarization in our communities. And that's really what I'm going to be doing a lot of. And it will look like many different things. But the reason I am in Ely right now is because through, you know, talking to BraverAngles so regularly these days, they were like, hey, did you know that Ely's trying to form a BraverAngles chapter? And the timing is great. It's the start of a contentious election year. This has been a place where a lot of issues that are extremely local but are informed by big decisions happening at the federal level are playing out, and they haven't always been easy for this community. And so I'm really eager to hear how things are going. I'll do a story about today and tonight and the ground and the all of the years that have sort of led up to trying to have this new discussion. But I hope to come back in a few months and see how things are going. Many of you now have my contact information, so if any of you want to reach out to me after the fact and have a conversation, I'd welcome that. Yeah, so I hope to be back in a few months, and you know, I'd be interested to see how this has all worked for you guys. So anyway, that's my spiel. Sorry, I took more time than I needed to.
So thank you very much. You know, I'm here to answer questions and hear concerns, and anything you want to say, I'm able to hear it. So thank you for everything you've done, for being here, for being concerned about the state of our democracy, and for practicing democracy. Thank you.
Okay, Johnny and I had a couple things we wanted to go over before you leave here. Remember, we have those surveys out, so make sure you fill those in as you can and drop them off in the back. And if you haven't included your email yet, make sure you get that. Maybe you didn't last time, and this time we want to make sure we get you on the list so we can keep in contact with you. Again, another pitch to join the national organization here, and a reminder that there's a lot of information on there, and when you do donate through there, we get 80% back through the Ely Alliance. So make sure you select Ely Alliance through there, because that helps us in that way too. There are QR codes in the back on the table. If you just want to scan it with your phone, that'll bring you a direct link right in there. Is that right, Johnny?
Yeah.
Yes, she agrees. Okay. There's also a donation jar in the back that helps pay for cookies and rent and all those fun things. So, and there's some cookies left back there. I did try one. It was very good, so I recommend you take one with you. Now let's talk about the next meeting date. We've had a number of people tell us that they can't get here because it's on the third Thursday. So we'd like to either try a different Thursday in the month or a different day of the week. Is there any strong feelings out there on what would work? Give you a little time to think about it. Johnny, you got a suggestion back there? Yeah, that's you.
I thought of Sundays.
Sunday?
Sunday afternoon.
Sunday afternoon
Evening.
or evening?
No.
No? Oh, sorry, Johnny, they don't like that
Something else.
one. Fourth Thursday? Now, would that work? Can we try a different Thursday and see how that works? Oh, we got 2 thumbs up. Let's try it. Mike says thumbs up too. Okay, so we'll try the 4th Thursday next month. We'll make sure, or Thursday, I'm sorry, 4th Thursday. And we just have to make sure we can get the space and facility and that type of thing. Okay.
That doesn't help you though.
No, it'll work. We'll make it work, Johnny. Committee volunteers. We need people, especially red-leaning or independent, but kind of red, to help on committees. So if you're interested and want to know more, I want you to see these people afterwards. Julie Nestor and Thea Sheldon, they are our refreshments committee. Thea's right here. Julie's over there. Thank you. If you want to help them out, please stop and see them. Logistics and tech, help with setup, cleanup, computer stuff. Ozzy. Where's Ozzy at? Over here. There he is, right there on the side. All right, thank you, Ozzy. Fundraising and finance. The BraverAngles national site makes this really easy. Lacey, right over here. Lacey. She's our money person. And outreach, which is Facebook, promoting events, press releases and stuff. Betsy. Where is Betsy? She's over there, right in the back there. Thank you.
Give me your time.
And last one, steering committee. This is help planning meetings and workshops, helping the group go in the direction that they want. Leadership, really. This committee needs to be balanced, blue and red. Linda Sutton. Where is Linda? She's right here in the red. So stop and see her if you're interested in those. Whatever you can do to help, we do really appreciate it. You know, we're all volunteers here. We're trying to make this work, and we're just so very happy to see so many people here tonight. Thank you one and all for coming. Thank you to our speaker tonight, and thank you for participating and becoming Braver Angels, because that's where we're all heading. So thank you again, and have a good night.